Nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, life advice, or representative of the views of the organization we are part of or affiliated with. See chainabstracted.com for more information.
You guys are known as Andy and Robbie from Rollup. Sometimes, you expect Robbie to show up, but Andy shows up, even though the picture's up there. So it's quite funny. But I have a question for y'all. So I guess chain abstraction means different things for everyone. I know you guys did 24 different interviews on chain abstraction. What the hell is this? How do we kind of simplify this for everyone? Because when I talk with a bunch of different folks, it means something different. But if you can generalize this term and be I want to give a clear explanation for folks that don't know, what that would be.
Yeah, so I'm happy to start. I would say that chain abstraction is the idea of using blockchain technology without realizing that it's blockchain. So basically, when you go and you deposit money into your bank account, it's actually, your bank is actually a decentralized bank. Maybe it's a savings account, right? And it's earning interest, but you don't realize that it's blockchain. Or when you're going and you're trading and you're trading on Robinhood, it's actually not Robinhood, but it's maybe it's a decentralized, Uniswap, right? But Uniswap is so sophisticated and advanced and has, so much adoption that people don't realize that it's even blockchain anymore. And so, yeah, this idea of chain abstraction, Andy's got the map up. This idea here is basically that all of this, this bridging, settlement, going from chain to chain, trading back and forth, whether it's an intent or it's a canonical bridge or it's a message passing protocol, all of that liquidity and infrastructure is all abstracted away from the end user. It's basically the technology underneath, akin to an Amazon web server or a server cloud compute. You really don't know any of the infrastructure that's powering when you use Google Meet or Riverside or Zoom, right? All of that uses cloud compute. It has a variety of different infrastructure technologies that are all being used concurrently to power it. But you don't interact with any of that. You hardly even know it. You just know the connection with the brand and their product. And that's all that the experience is.
Yeah, I mean, just to add some color on the map. So a couple of things on chain abstraction. I think a lot of people are confused thinking that it's just one team going to do it. Just Near is going to solve all of chain abstraction, which is just not the reality for any of these teams in the map. I think Near's done a really good job. Particle's done a good job. Socket's done a pretty good job as of recent. I know Layer Zero has been pretty kind of adamant on pushing this. So a lot of these teams, I think, need to kind of collaborate together. So the goal of this map was to basically show that this chain abstraction stack is inherently modular in its own right, or it's kind of itemized based on different teams that need to collaborate to achieve this kind of end state. And so for us, I think that we're thinking about it chain abstraction is a spectrum of users who want to have different kind of security or risk preferences, where some users may not care at all about what chain they're on and some kind of may care more. And I think that what we're basically seeing is this notion of a single wallet interface, a single account, which you can access all of your different L2 and L1 chain balances on, and basically be able to use that on any application within any chain that wallet is kind of compatible with. And so kind of how I see it going is we have a wallet, which is kind of connected to a MetaMask or to a Rabby, which you kind of import your private key into. One Balance, Particle, Near, Zion, Orb Labs, all of these teams working on that at kind of the top of the stack. There on the permissions and orchestrations. And then when you as a user go to interact with Uniswap on Base, but you have tokens on on Arbitrum and on Near and on Solana, then in comes these kind of order flow sources and auctions and solver networks and solvers who are basically going to provide this interface for you to be able to go and do these types of swaps and interactions. And then kind of behind the scenes, you have these intent-based kind of solver networks, Everclear clearing, transport layers, Hyperlane, Union, etc., all kind of settling these kind of transactions behind. And so like my grand vision is like we have these wallets which you can interact on all these different chains, and then that's on like the front end on the UX facing side for the users. So users should really not have to care where their funds are. They should just have to care of what apps that they want to use. And then behind the scenes, you've got these kind of sequencing networks, these shared sequencers, these intent-based bridges, and these kind of slower, more secure transport layers that are facilitating the process so that when I have my tokens on one chain and I want to interact on a chain on another, and I click that button on my wallet that has all my balances on it, it like almost like in sub 1 second or sub 5 seconds and even sub like 500 milliseconds happens behind the scenes. And as a user, I just get the result of the transaction without really realizing that I'm using solver networks and intents and across and layer 0. And so that's kind of like the vision, and that's what we wanted to showcase on the map. I'm really not sure if that made it easier to understand. Like, I think the question was to kind of make it simpler. That may have made it less simple, but hope that kind of like helps clarify our vision as well as like how we're seeing it.
So to simplify it, pretty much there's how many? 5? Like if you were to just say, hey, I'm a chain abstraction project. You guys said, well, like if you can list those out, maybe that's helpful. And then we can deep dive into kind of some of the sections. I know, like, for example, you know, there's a lot, right? Like we can't just say there's one project that like does it all. I think there's just a collaborative effort like modularity as well. Yeah, so permissions, order flow, solver networks, and then obviously settlement. So that's kind of the 5 actually that, I mean, standards and everything, but like none of the users will care about it. I guess like that's more builder oriented.
I think that's important. Is like users are going to care about different levels of granularity. And so there are the users that aren't going to care about any of these 4. They're going to look at this. Maybe they, see chain abstraction as one general amorphous blob, and they don't dive into it. Maybe they don't even care about chain abstraction at all, and they just care about, whatever it is that they're buying on any particular website. So I'm looking at this kind of like as like an opt-in, letting the user kind of decide what level of granularity they want, and at what depth are they trying to understand where their money is and where their data is, and then giving them the option. If they want to know more, they can, but not showing them that right off the bat, just kind of like letting them decide how deep they want to take their own knowledge journey.
So maybe this is a spicy question, but is it from a tech standpoint, is it a must-have or is it a nice-to-have, right? There's 2 differences there. So what do you guys think after doing this research?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the must-have right now and like what the entire space should be focusing on is just the cross-chain interaction. So for like basically bridging and users on different L2s and like gas abstractions. Like I think the ordering of like processing transactions, clicking sign, paying gas, trying to figure out what that all is about for like from the user perspective is extremely confusing. And I also think that bridging is a huge obstacle. So those 2 for me are like what all chain abstraction providers should be all in on right now, because frankly it's a little bit confusing and broad. And I think those are must-haves. And then I think a lot of these are like, some of them are like nice to have. Like I think like after we can get that, then I think like a really nice to have now, but eventually a must have is going to be like a better on-ramp experience, on and off ramp. I think that's kind of like a nice to have, but I think that the cross chain and gas right now is like what all teams should be all in on. And I think that these teams should be doing a better job of showing the products as they are now, showing more demos, showing the applications, showing what this feels like, getting users to actually, download their wallets, because a lot of teams are like, we're here and it's happening. But like, I don't think people feel that it's real. Ironically, it feels abstract still. So I think that like if teams can focus on these demos and showing that like what these wallets are like and what this experience is like, and do that just on cross-chain and gas as the must-haves, then I think that we can get to like some of the nice-to-haves later next year. But I think those are the first 2 obstacles that we have to kind of cross.
And maybe just to flip that on its head, looking, in the 3 to 5 year time horizon, what would be your base case scenario for what like a consumer or a crypto user would be expected to do on their own in order to participate in, the Web3 economy? Are they doing it through a custodian? Are they going to have their own wallet and they are handling their keys? Kind of how do you see the average user of crypto downstream?
Yeah, I think like the cryptographic nature of private keys and public keys and that kind of like seed phrase concept is going to stay around, like obviously in perpetuity. I just think that the way that they'll be stored will be changed. So I think that there's probably room for some design based on like multi-party computation where the users can own like bits and parts of their keys, but like they can be stored in other areas, or it can be done in some sort of like social login or social recovery manner. So I think that we'll see like that improvement happen. I think like some users will still opt in to like just write their seed phrase down or, do it in that way. But then I think generally, like, I think the main hurdle is just going to be getting in a wallet off the App Store. I do think a lot of these wallets are eventually going to be on the App Store as well for Apple and Google. And then I think it's like just going to be the hurdle is going to be just like it is when you're going to send funds to Schwab to invest in stocks or Robinhood. I think it's just going to be sending your money from your bank account to your crypto wallet somehow via some on-ramp. And then I expect once they get there that the experience will be like extremely similar to that of like using a Venmo or using like a application as we know it today. But I think that the big hurdle is going to be the seed phrase and kind of like this, like the wallet security, which is kind of where your custodian aspect comes in. And then I also think that like that on-ramp thing that I was getting to after we kind of solve this cross-chaining gas abstractions, I think is going to be the hurdle for people. But I think that's what they'd be expecting.
I tend to agree on especially the App Store thing. Like I saw Apple announced today that they're going to open up their payment chip. And so Circle is going to integrate that and have more native USDC payments. I think probably just tap to pay, right? When we're at like literally buying coffee with crypto could become a reality where, that was a goal for a long time. So yeah, I think that's happening now. Timescale 3 to 5 years. Yeah, I think like just taking that to another level, which would be like more fungibility between dollars and stable coins, I think could become a lot easier. Like mobile first, DeFi mobile first crypto, in terms of wallets on the App Store, definitely agreed there. And then, yeah, like I really don't anticipate consumers changing their behavior too much. Like kind of Alton's question about like what are they expected to do? Is it a must have or a nice to have? Like I tend to think even on that time scale of like 3 to 5 years, people are just gonna buy stuff on Amazon. And I think it's pretty simple. I think it's going to be like connect or sign in with Ethereum. I think once we have smart accounts, there's going to be like kind of the transition of wallets and integrating into like Apple. But then there's also going to be upgrades to the Ethereum contracts and the Ethereum wallet infrastructure. Maybe that takes into account NPC, but like upgrading the Ethereum technology for account abstraction and smart accounts such that we have social recovery and we can just sign in with Ethereum like we have sign in with Google and sign in with Apple. Then, I just connect my Ethereum account to Amazon and I have all of my crypto on hand so that I can just use it to buy stuff on Amazon. People still just buy stuff on Amazon. They don't really know the difference, but they're just connecting a different account that they use to pay for stuff. And then all of that data is integrated into the entire on-chain economy. We can use chain abstraction to power a lot of that. Maybe wherever your USDC is, right, on Optimism or Arbitrum, it gets routed from, Amazon becomes an order flow source. Your stable coins get orchestrated from whatever network it's on to wherever Amazon accepts payment. Or if Amazon doesn't even want to accept crypto, they use one of these off-ramp sources like Circle to off-ramp the crypto, and then Amazon just gets fiat. They don't even know that they're accepting crypto.
Yeah, I have a point here. So like all the ones we see here are pretty much decentralized, right? And I guess, Robbie, you mentioned, USDC. I got quite excited about the news just because, I was thinking about like what developers can do. but Circle is centralized. So I guess like, are we going to see, I mean, chain abstraction is a thing that already existed with exchanges, if you think about it, right? Like you go to Binance, you can do whatever you like, but are we going in these two worlds, and are these like separate worlds, or they collide? Like, what do you guys think?
Not all of the projects on this map are decentralized. Like Wintermute, the solver, is totally centralized.
Yeah, say it.
Even Uniswap X is like, they're pretty centralized. Like they're just passing their order flow. And Suave, I think, is on here too. And MEV Boost is another form of private order flow. Like, it's like privacy and decentralization is like used as a tool, but then there's all kind, like, people are using these private order flow sources as a way to avoid MEV. And so, like, would you rather, have like more privacy, less decentralization, or would you rather get MEV'd? And there's trade-offs to both. I think people only care about decentralization when it comes to security, not so much when it comes to like liquidity and some other things. And so we're going to see like some pretty novel takes. It's not, I used to be a decentralization maxi, and I think I've gotten a little bit more center on that scale. But yeah, I tend to think like solvers and intent-centric approaches, a lot of these are off-chain actors, and then they cryptographically and verifiably prove the outcome on chain. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that, where a lot of that action happens off chain, but then it's proven and settled on chain. And then that's a nice compromise where we still get a lot of on chain verifiability, but it's not maximally decentralized. Not everything is on chain.
Makes sense. Well, thanks for putting this through. I think this is helpful for everyone to come in and see.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Altan, what do you guys, like, when you first look at this, like, what is this, like, other than being like, what the hell, like, there's way too many teams, like, what do you guys think, like, what's your, like, not on the design, or like, just like, from this, like, chain abstraction ecosystem, like, how are you guys thinking about this with regards to how this map looks? Like, does it make sense? Is there a category that you think is, like, more important or more developed than others?
Like, from my sense, I mean, like, so account abstraction has been around for a while. I guess, like, people understand that wallet abstraction, like, people started to get it. Orchestration, like, I know Near does it. Like, I used to be at Near myself, and we still part of the Near ecosystem. Like, I don't get it as a normal user, but I think crypto builders will get it. Like, the middle stack, I think, like, a lot of folks, like, 50% is like, what is a solver network? What is a solver? What is order flow, right? Like, you need to be a bit of an advanced user. But I think, like, the top, maybe the way you structured is like settlement infra. I think people get what settlement is at this point. I mean, there's still debate around whether settlement is real or not. I mean, you talk about this, but there's certain things like make sense to me. And if somebody wants to learn more, I mean, this is a starting point. I'm like, oh, what is an order flow? Like, oh, let me just learn about that. And then what is Suave? I can go learn about that. What is Ori? So it's a good point. Like, that was one of the things when I was actually publicly said, like, is there a map that I can go and find stuff? I think it's a good sort of a starting point for folks to study, right? And that's what people, crypto media should do, which kind of appreciate you guys for doing that.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's definitely a comprehensive landscape. What I usually defer back to is elephant in the room tends to be the unit economics and the kind of understanding of how does the economics actually work under the hood, especially when you're dealing with different chains that have different fee structures and also block times, etc. So yeah, I think this is a good starting point, but I think I would bet if you could take this and like go deep on it and look at the intricacies of how each of these solutions purports to work, scale it up and say, let's imagine 1 million users on each one. What happens with the unit economics? It'd probably reveal a lot more about what's actually real versus what's fake.
Yeah, we did have an article that went along with this, and we did a Twitter space where people got in and they discussed it. Twitter space got a little spicy. And yeah, the entire explanation of how we kind of like contextualize the categories, our rationale for how these categories work together, is all in this article. So I encourage people to check this out on the rollup.co. And yeah, Michael, I think, yeah, like if you guys put it in the show notes, that would be great so people can check it out.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I like
So that's yeah. Well,
I like the idea of the economics, and like it's funny because all of these all these categories and these teams are gonna have totally custom implementations of how they work together, and they share value. But I think a general rule of thumb, I'm gonna get toasted for saying this because it is so much more nuanced, but like at a very high level, it's all auctions. Like all of these teams are just bidding like up the, and that's one of the things I like about the map is how we structured is like settlement is like the base layer, and then it goes up the stack as far as like more consumer facing. And so you can kind of think about like the settlement agencies are like bidding for go down the stack, I guess. Like the solvers and the solver networks are bidding for order flow, and then they have to get the proposers bid for the blocks. So you kind of just have like these different auction mechanisms where everyone just bids for the right to provide their service.
yeah. So would you say that's the? I guess if a builder comes in today and wants to build something here, like is that the one that people should focus on, or are you guys opinionated there, or you just don't care? Like, hey, just come in and contribute to the ecosystem.
I mean, I tend to think like apps are. I'm still biased towards apps, like just because I think that's sexier. Like that's what I want to use. Like there is plenty of infrastructure. I think there could be more infrastructure to make it faster and cheaper, but ultimately, like I think all of us here and probably the listeners of this are like advanced enough to know how to use the thing. And so if I'm talking selfishly, like, yeah, I want more apps, that are fun to use. And actually there's a guy I just came across his account yesterday is OX Designer who posted like this really long thread of like some super cool user interfaces of stuff. And he gave me a ton of ideas, like even the Amazon thing. I gotta like kind of shout him out for that because that really puts it into perspective of how, that's what I think normal users and advanced users could converge to just using that on a more daily basis. Yes, this is the thread. Some of this stuff is so cool, and I can just picture like signing in with Ethereum, and then you get access to like,
that shit is expensive, but it's okay.
Tickets. Yeah, right. Vitalik can afford that.
3K USD per was.
Some of these things are so dope. Like the faster checkout, the thing on Amazon, the integrated search, even the data. There's one on here. I think it's this one, the browsing data. There's some projects that like Camp Network is going to start to like let advertisers bid on your data, I believe. Is how it's going to look in like kind of a futuristic state. And so like imagine like, getting paid for your data.
I mean,
this is all like so applicable to the chain abstraction conversation right now. Like, all of this stuff. Like when people ask like, what's the vision? It's like, it's not necessarily like Adam Cochran's prediction success on X, but it's like all these little integrations of like what crypto can do and what blockchains are capable of, but just like plugging them into. So maybe when we're thinking about like we need more apps, maybe we just need to like plug in the current tech that we have into already popular stuff, rather than like build completely new things.
And so much of that is social coordination. Like I wish it was an engineering problem and you could just throw the research gigabrains at it, but to integrate something into Amazon's front end, like maybe like I don't know if Bezos got to sign off on it, but like someone deep in Amazon has to like be the decision maker. But and into Walmart, all this is super, super cool. And buy with Ethereum or sign in with Ethereum. I think that's going to be a game changer for how we connect these things. And then chain abstraction powers all of that using all of the infrastructure providers on the map.
It says alt. It says Trump and Biden. It's kind of funny. Yeah, that's good. Thanks for sharing that, guys. I mean, the UX designer has been doing an amazing job in terms of like, and if you guys can actually like ping him or her, I don't know but essentially just say, hey, build us some chain abstracted stuff. I think it'd be quite cool to use that word there. Awesome. So I guess like maybe tell me more about, you guys talk a lot about like the L2s, modular chains, and sort of ZK rollups. Like maybe we cover this whole chain abstraction stuff, but like how do these all kind of, because I know I've seen Andy kind of start talking about these things. How do these kind of intersect and collide? Like you guys probably have some thoughts there.
Definitely, yeah. So I don't know if your audience has heard of the modular mullet, but I think it now is a great time to kind of showcase what this means for your audience. So the idea of kind of like how these technologies are going to interact, from our view, kind of inspired by a lot of these kind of modular players and some Nick from Celestia and some other teams in Everclear and things, is we've got this idea of like, so I was kind of talking about, okay, so we're going to have chain abstracted UX on the front end, and on the back end, it's going to be powered like underneath by these really fast intent-based interoperability protocols, or some sort of block building and shared sequencing networks, or these kind of transport layers like Hyperlane, like Union, like Layer 0. So that's kind of like how I see the actual UX happening on the actual kind of user facing, and what's going to be powering it. But like, what are users going to be doing? They're going to be interacting with modular blockchains as applications, as app chains, or as apps on rollups in the future. And that's where the demand for these chain abstraction and interop solutions is going to come from. So how do I see these kind of playing together? It comes to this kind of meme of this modular mullet, where basically what we end up with is we have this kind of better UX and this kind of interoperability powered chain abstracted UX. But on the back end, you've got users wanting to access apps that are having their own sovereign block space, operating as app chains or applications on an L2. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
You have to add, you have some, yeah,
Does
it
that make
makes sense.
sense?
Do you have something to add, Robbie? Or is it you probably follow the same kind of logic?
No, yeah, I mean, I prescribe to that as well. Like, yeah, I think we're gonna continue to see this, like, proliferation of like more apps, more infrastructure. It is, and more chains, more rollups, and we have to like really think about like, all right, what time scale are we on? Because like all of the stuff we saw on OX Designer, all of that is like 3 to 5 years at least, like to get the social coordination and incentives right, to like implement into like these already large scale existing businesses, Amazon, Walmart, etc. On a more like here and now, it is very much modular mullet. Like this is the modular mullet era. Chain abstraction front end, like real people, the users that are using stuff on chain are using these front ends, and they're using chain abstraction in the front end, and modularity is powering it underneath. I kind of tend to think like, if we had those like front and back, like chain abstraction is going to move further to the back as we go like down the road. And then it'll be more of like the brands that are already consumer facing. Amazon, like those are going to continue to be the front, and they will again be the front of the mullet. But we'll start to have modularity in the back, chain abstraction in the middle, and then like these existing front ends and large businesses in the front. In the long run,
Yeah, or just like blockchains and L2s that actually do a good job of like
yes,
growing top of funnel. Like what Luke was trying to do with Abstract Chain, like that is an example. Base has done a good job. Solana's even done a great job as well, right? Like those chains that do a good job at top of funnel will really dominate on that front. And I just want to like unpack a little bit why this is happening. Like, why do we even need chain abstraction, and why are we even talking about this? Like, we're like big modular bulls. We've angel invested in a ton of modular projects. We work with a ton of the projects. We agree with the thesis, but it's undeniable that this fragmentation of Ethereum's rollups and of all these different chains is an unavoidable consequence of the modular thesis, of the idea of expanding block space, of growing sovereign sequencing, of having app chains, of having kind of this expansion off of this noisy neighbor problem. It's like you achieve something and then you kind of create a bigger, larger problem. And I think that we have to kind of address that is the biggest bet right now of the modular thesis. Like the bet of the modular thesis is that we are going to be able to figure out how we can put these apps and these chains together in a chain abstracted way, powered by interoperability solutions underneath, and that we're going to be able to do it quickly and do it well, such that we can compete with Solana, Aptos, Sui, Say, Avalanche, and these kind of larger L1s, which honestly I think are going to get all blended together anyways if chain abstraction happens. The end result, if we can do that, is almost like unfathomable, because it's like we can get this ecosystem of all these different chains and all these apps and like all seamlessly interoperate. We can outscale any L1, even if they just centralize to the max. We can still theoretically outscale them, and definitely if we're trying to compete on kind of like censorship resistance. And kind of the risk here is that we can't figure this fragmentation problem out, and that it's too difficult to solve. And so I just wanted to add that kind of perspective as to why we're even having this conversation, why chain abstraction is really growing, and why interoperability and intents are really growing in terms of mindshare. It's because this problem, which is the problem of the modular thesis, is the fragmentation of chains and liquidity and users. The problem that the modular thesis is solving is the congestion of Ethereum L1, of other L1s, of noisy neighbors, and of application builders not being able to basically control their own transaction ordering, their own sequencing, earn MEV, and kind of have a customizable execution environment. So we solved that, but now we're kind of faced here. And so funnily enough, we asked Jill from Espresso on the podcast that just went out today, what is going to be the solution, or what's going to be the problem that we solve next after we put these together? And this is where I got to the nice to have. She said on-ramping. She said this on and off-ramp experience is going to be the next kind of like big hurdle that the space is going to have to solve. So kind of all over the place there, but I wanted to kind of just tie that together with what Rob was saying with regards to the top of funnel, the mullet, and kind of the problem space that we're even having this podcast about as we are now.
Yeah, man, definitely. I'm super excited about that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's spot on. Like the congestion in Ethereum gas fees gave birth to modularity. And, you know, we saw all L1s, we saw L2s, we saw sidechains. All of that is born out of this congestion on Ethereum. And then modularity gave birth to chain abstraction, because we wanted modular, we wanted more networks, we wanted app chains and rollups. But then once you have all of these things, like, you lose out on the unification and the easy user experience when everything was just an app on Ethereum. And so now we need to connect it all. We need to abstract it all. And that's where we get chain abstraction. And ultimately, this will come full circle. Like, I believe in what Jill is saying, what Andy's saying, with on and off ramps. Like, I want to see the day where we get orchestration amongst fiat and on-chain services. And I have an intent to like submit something, and then my transaction gets fronted on my destination fiat bank, and then the solver gets repaid, whether that's on-chain or they get repaid in fiat. And then we don't have on-chain to fiat take 3 to 5 business days, right? It happens seamlessly, like a Venmo or a stablecoin transaction. Like, even bank to bank, like, this can all be innovated, and I think it will be innovated with blockchain, with solvers, with intent-centric models. Like, I think that'll continue to innovate blockchain, and then blockchain will just eat the existing traditional financial world.
Blockchain eats TradFi. That's a good headline. Cool, guys. I mean, we talked about a bunch of stuff, right? So we did talk about chain abstraction. Obviously, we're all modular bulls. I'm there too. But how do we, like, are there other things that you guys are seeing that people are excited about as a kind of like I would say, you're not a media company, but I guess like seeing the space from, you know, covering all these other projects. We're like, hey, like, you know, we talked about apps. Like, what's exciting to you guys for the next sort of 1 to 2 years or maybe 5 years?
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick as well that, like, one of the greatest things about crypto is the composability of crypto, and like the way that like these like money Legos can interoperate with each other, and like we can kind of stack different primitives on top of each other, whether it be chains themselves, parts of chains, or applications. And so like figuring out how to bring that and blend that all back together for this modular space is like the biggest North Star. And I think that like that's one of the strongest bull cases for crypto as a technology and blockchain. I think that's what that designer guy was kind of hitting on in that thread as well. So just wanted to kind of make that point as well. With regards to like what we're seeing, the shared security area is getting extremely, extremely interesting. So Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, Nectar Network, and I'm missing one, who are doing a lot of work in restaking. Yeah, Carrick. That whole space is getting very interesting. The Eigenlayer AVS ecosystem is exploding. Nuffle's there. You guys are doing some great work there. The Rollup's going to do a big series about this coming up soon. That's some alpha. So that in particular is very interesting to us because like slashing's going live. Eigenlayer is going to be slashing eigen tokens. People are like, "What? This isn't very secure." So they're probably going to end up doing ETH and then eventually like Bitcoin or other assets as well, Sol, etc. Perhaps Near is doing some cool restaking stuff. Then you have Symbiotic doing their own kind of mix on it. And you've got Nectar doing DVT with restaking. And then you've got a plethora of AVSs who are supporting all of these different networks and relying on them for security. And slashing's going live very soon. So it feels like this idea of like this whole ecosystem is about to get like turned on. And like we're about to kind of see like how real this is and like how much of a blow up risk there is and like what's going to go wrong, what's going to go right. We're going to see which LRT providers are the best at selecting their delegations. We're going to see which node operators are competent enough to delegate stake properly and not get wrecked. We're going to see which projects are smart enough to not go directly to node operators and instead go to LRTs with quants to do kind of their delegations. We're going to see the wars of Symbiotic and Eigenlayer between who's going to give the best yields and rewards and tokens and support. And so I think this whole space is like going to be a really, really fun thing to be a part of the next like 6 months. Obviously like the modular space and then also like the AI stuff, but I don't have too much insight into the AI so much, but definitely going to start paying more attention to this whole like AVS and shared security ecosystem.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Like it's a game, right? It's a game between bunch of different actors. So that's why I got super interested in this when I was like last year was like, oh wow, actually, you know, like I did a whole maybe like small thread because Tarun was talking about it was like, you know, like how much security does an AVS need? So like who needs to be smart there, right? So LRTs and vaults need to be super smart because they need to be switching back and forth. They're the risk managers of the whole space, right? So it's quite interesting. I'm excited about that. How about you, Robbie?
Same. I mean, I think that is definitely it over the next 6 months. Like, I don't have a ton to add on that time frame. I do think Eigenlayer is I think they're going to turn on slashing. I think they're going to incorporate Bitcoin and Sol into some of those like restakeable tokens. I think it's going to empower like a new wave of rollups and like tools, fast finality tools, pre-confirmations, rollups, AI. I am still excited about AI. I think it gets so much hype, but I do think it's going to start to make an impact on more industries that have not been impacted by technology in quite a long time. And I think it's really, really important to make sure that it stays open source. And so I think that will continue to proliferate. Generally, I'm excited for like this new era of blockchain where, yes, I think it'll continue to eat traditional finance. It is a game. There's incentives. And that's where DeFi, like most, if not all of it, is still DeFi. But I think like we're starting to see blockchain take on cloud compute, and like we have verifiable compute that Eigenlayer enables, and all these restaking providers enable. And I think blockchain verifiable compute will start to take on cloud compute as the latency comes down and the costs come down. I'm pretty excited for the day that verifiable compute becomes on the scale of cloud compute. And then we have like these large scale businesses start to question, why am I paying this much to Amazon AWS or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure? Why am I not using an open source verifiable blockchain if it is in fact cheaper and faster and it's more secure and it's verifiable? Like then the incentives become such that it just makes sense to migrate onto the thing that provides a better service. And so I think that could bring the next wave of users in a sense. It could bring this next wave of transactions when blockchains are at that level of throughput.
Yeah, I would agree. Awesome, guys. Well, what else do you guys want to share? Like, is there something coming in Rollup? Because you guys did a rebrand, I guess. But is there more? I guess you guys started talking about a bit more AVSs and the kind of this cool space. But what's for the future for you guys? Like, what's the vision coming into? Because we talked about a lot of chain abstraction, but I kind of want to talk about you guys. What's how the future looks like?
Yeah, I think I think we're hitting a groove. Like, I think the Rollup is in a spot where we're starting to have really fun and innovative conversations. We're again, like, having a lot more of these open workshops where there's ideas like, we have all these live streams and panels. A lot of those are one-on-one conversations or like general just round tables. But I like when the pen hits the paper, the fingers start typing, and the code starts like really cranking, and we start running into, how can these projects work together? How can teams collaborate? And if we're kind of a shelling point for those conversations, that's when I really start to see value. There's tons of stuff we got into the pipeline. If Andy wants to share any of that, I'll let him spill the beans.
We got a Eigenlayers content series and a shared security content series coming out October, going to 2040 Token 2049 September. So catch you guys there. We got we'll be announcing the VM Wars podcast under the Rollup in a few weeks. So that might be some alpha. Depends on when this
cut before that if that doesn't work.
Yeah, so
that was the part. I wasn't sure if we were gonna hit that part. All right, thank you, John.
And then kind of expand the Rollup from there. And yeah, gonna scale the team a bit. Gonna kind of bring on one more person. We have a couple, 8 or 9 peeps now. Team's going well. Yeah, just got the new site, the new look. Just really trying to keep the quality up, keep the brand content really high, and just grow the audience, grow the numbers, and just keep kind of pushing and taking advantage of the attention that the Rollup has right now and that crypto has for the coming year, 18 months or so. And then kind of more longer term, it's going to end up transitioning into more of like a consultancy and just kind of less content and less kind of in the trenches and more like higher level work, and potentially spinning out some sort of like research type of arm or something to that extent. Probably going to do like a next iteration of our site as well. So this is like V1. We want to have like some sort of like members lounge or like some sort of like research kind of arm that we can either put behind a paywall or figure out a way to kind of get people to buy into that or at least want to read it. And then, yeah, man, I think just like keep on keeping on.
What do you guys want to see? Like, do you want to see like the Rollup become like a hub of like, you can do swaps there, you can do deposits or earn yield, or like just continue to learn, more research, more like, findings on like what we found are successful for projects? What would you guys want to see, like, as you're listening to a podcast, like what kind of actions do you want to take?
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly think like we need people that do content in crypto and bring those voices. So I think you guys have been doing a good job there. Building a product, I mean, you guys will do well probably in the product because you have a distribution. If you do a product, people will use the product. Like Bankless guys did it, like it. And I think some folks are using the product. So I think as the brand grows, I think you guys have a shot to do like both. Maybe launch a Rollup or something. Can be kind of funny. Rollup, or like something like that. Eventually, could make sense if you ask me. Or like maybe in-person meetups. Like I don't know. Like Blockworks have been doing some great job there. You guys can pull like specific like to Rollup, and if you guys can like, because this market is gonna grow, I think, in my opinion, and the more you kind of hone in there, I think the guys will continue to do better.
I think that if you stay on the education vein, the biggest blocker right now, and this includes among VCs, among other builders, and among people in foundations, is an inadequate understanding of how these architectures work. So a lot of times, people who grew up in crypto in the ETH era never really learned well the architecture of Near or Solana, really in terms of how it handles certain problems or certain trade-offs. Same things now happening with the restaking architecture and what Nuffle's doing as like kind of a middle layer, unification layer, if you will. It's such a toll, I think, for most people to keep up with all the changes, but these changes are going to bring massive opportunities for new companies, new investments, etc. And I think the the kind of effort that your average investor or builder has to do to even like understand the game is still really far from where it should be, right? So most people, at least in my experience, build or engage with a certain stack because their friends did or because someone gave them money to do that, not because it was the best stack for what they're interested in doing, or it served their use case optimally. And I think there's a killer opportunity to go hard on. Altan, you guys actually do some great diagrams. Do go hard on like the architecture diagrams in the Match Made in Heaven, the Nuffle blog. You guys do like great just pictures of how the product is gonna work and kind of how that unravels. I think if you guys could like corner that market and be like, hey, we can simplify chain abstraction and all that complexity, there's real value there.
Yeah. Nuffle has great people, so we're kind of happy there. Just so is Rollup. So, well, nice to have you guys. Maybe a couple of last words before we kind of close this. Anything that the viewers should be aware of. Anything that a lot of sort of like near folks watch this. So, anything you want to share, feel free to do so.
Yeah. Check us out. Our website is therollup.co. Come vibe on Twitter at therollup.co as well. Really like what Nir's doing. Super bullish and excited for chain abstraction to be in the forefront. I think the narrative's been picking up significantly. So excited to play our part in that. And guys, show some demos, get some user generated content, get some people trying the apps and seeing how easy it is. Get a video of your grandma or your mom using a Near wallet. Like, let's show people the real usage and let's show people that this is easy. Let's not just talk about it and make it abstract. Let's show demos. Let's show tangible results. And I can help do a UGC if you guys need for Near, for any chain abstraction wallet. I'm happy to try it out. And I think that's what we need more